Before she became famous, before the news and the politics, there was a young woman from Alaska, strong, kind, and full of dreams. NSHE grew up far from the spotlight, but her story would soon reach the whole world. Some people loved her, others judged her. NBUT, very few ever knew who she really was. These private photos show the real Sarah Palin, the mother, the wife, the woman behind the headlines. NHER laughter, her pain, and her truth. Sarah Palin's story begins far from the spotlight. Before she became one of the most talked about women in American politics, she was a small-town girl from Alaska with big dreams and unstoppable determination. Born in 1964 in Sandpoint, Idaho, Sarah's early life was defined by hard work, family values, and a deep love for her country. Her parents, Chuck and Sally Heath, moved the family to Alaska when she was just a few months old, seeking a fresh start in the cold northern wilderness. That tough Alaskan lifestyle shaped Sarah's personality, strong, fearless, and never afraid of a challenge. Growing up in Wasilla, a small community surrounded by mountains and endless snow, Sarah learned to hunt, fish, and play sports. She wasn't just another girl in town, she was a competitor. At Wasilla High School, she led her basketball team as captain and helped them win the state championship. Her teammates called her Sarah Barracuda because of her fierce and aggressive playing style. That same fire would later define her political career. And after finishing high school, Sarah attended several colleges before earning a degree in communications and journalism. Her dream was to work in television, and she even became a sports reporter for a local Alaska station. But life had other plans. She met Todd Palin, a rugged, outdoorsy Alaskan with a passion for snowmobiling and adventure. The two fell in love, and their marriage became one of the state's most talked about unions. Together, they built a family rooted in the spirit of Alaska, hardworking, independent, and proud. NHOWEVER, Sarah's ambition didn't stop there. Even as a young mother, she was deeply involved in community work and local issues. People noticed her energy and ability to connect with everyone she met. Soon she entered politics, becoming mayor of her hometown, Wasilla. Her rise was fast, fueled by her charm, sharp mind, and the image of a woman who represented both traditional values and a bold, modern voice. NBUT behind the cameras and campaign speeches, Sarah Palin's private life remained full of personal moments. Photos that tell a very different story. Pictures of her with her children, laughing during fishing trips, or comforting her son Trig, who was born with Down syndrome, reveal the emotional side of a woman who often faced harsh media scrutiny. These images show the real Sarah, a mother, a wife, and a woman balancing fame with family. This was just the beginning of her incredible journey, from small-town Alaska to the center of American politics, and later to international fame and controversy. In the next part, we'll uncover how a woman from one of America's coldest states became one of its hottest political topics. Sarah Palin's rise to national fame happened faster than almost anyone could imagine. By the early 2000s, she was already well known in Alaska, a mayor who connected easily with ordinary people and wasn't afraid to take on big issues. Her image was different from traditional politicians. She wasn't from Washington. She was from Alaska, a mother of 5 who hunted moose, fished in icy rivers, and spoke with the kind of honesty people weren't used to hearing in politics. In 2006, she made history when she became the youngest and first female governor of Alaska. Her approval ratings were sky high, and for a moment, she looked unstoppable. Sarah had built a reputation as a reformer, someone who challenged corruption and wasn't afraid to stand up to powerful oil companies or even members of her own party. Her leadership style was bold, energetic, and full of confidence. She was a woman who could command attention without trying too hard. NBUT everything changed in 2008. Senator John McCain, the Republican presidential candidate, shocked the nation when he chose Sarah Palin as his running mate. Overnight, she went from being a local leader in Alaska to one of the most talked about women in the world. The announcement made headlines everywhere. Many saw her as a fresh face, a working mother with strong values, small-town roots, and a powerful story that could inspire millions of Americans. NTHE Spotlight, however, was both a blessing and a curse. Cameras followed her everywhere. Every speech, every gesture, every old photo from her past was suddenly front-page news. The media dug deep into her life, from her college days to her family photos, from her wardrobe choices to her accent. Some loved her for being authentic and fearless, while others criticized her for being inexperienced and unprepared for the national stage. Still, Palin's charisma was undeniable. Crowds loved her speeches. Her rallies drew thousands, and her hockey mom personality made her relatable to everyday Americans. She could stand on a stage, smile, and make people believe she truly understood their struggles. For many, she represented hope, a voice that spoke for small towns, families, and traditional American values. Yet behind the fame, there was pressure. Her family was suddenly under public scrutiny, especially when the media began reporting on her teenage daughter's pregnancy during the campaign. The intense attention was overwhelming, and the private life Sarah once protected was now fully exposed. Those personal photos that once showed a simple, loving family in Alaska became symbols of a national debate about morality, motherhood, and politics. Despite the controversy, Sarah Palin's name was now permanently written in American political history. She had become more than just a governor. She was a national icon, a topic of endless conversation, and a woman who could move crowds with her presence alone. NBUT, as the campaign went on, the challenges grew, and what happened next would change Sarah Palin's life and career forever. When the 2008 presidential election finally ended, Sarah Palin found herself standing at a crossroads. The campaign had been one of the most dramatic in modern American history. Although John McCain and Sarah Palin lost to Barack Obama and Joe Biden, Palin had become a household name. She was no longer just Alaska's governor. She was a global celebrity, recognized almost everywhere she went. Her speeches, her voice, even her jokes had become part of pop culture. But fame, as she quickly learned, comes with a heavy price. And in the months following the election, the media obsession with her did not fade. If anything, it grew even more intense. Late-night comedy shows made her a frequent target, impersonating her accent and exaggerating her mistakes. Some people laughed, others felt it was cruel and unfair. But through it all, Sarah kept her head high. She returned to Alaska, determined to finish her term as governor and focus on her family. However, the constant media attention and political pressure began to wear her down. Every decision she made was criticized. Every photo of her children was discussed on television. In 2009, only 3 years after becoming governor, Sarah Palin shocked everyone again, this time by resigning from office. She explained that the non-stop attacks and expensive legal battles were hurting the state and her family. Her decision sparked another wave of debate. Some called it quitting, others called it courage, a woman choosing her family over politics. And after leaving office, Sarah embraced a new role, not as a politician but as a public personality. She signed a major book deal for her memoir Going Rogue, which instantly became a bestseller. The book gave readers a glimpse into her private world, her struggles, her beliefs, and her side of the story. Millions of people who admired her saw her not as a politician but as a fighter, someone who stood up against powerful systems and refused to be silenced. And soon, television came calling. Sarah joined Fox News as a political commentator, where her voice once again reached millions of viewers. She appeared in documentaries and interviews, and even starred in her own reality show, Sarah Palin's Alaska, which showed a softer, family-oriented side of her life. The show featured her fishing with Todd, hiking through mountains, and spending time with her children. Viewers saw the natural Sarah again, the same woman who once lived quietly in Wasilla before politics changed everything. Behind the scenes, though, her personal life was changing too. The fame had taken a toll on her marriage. After more than 30 years together, Sarah and Todd eventually separated in 2019. It was a painful moment, and once again, headlines splashed their private matters across every media outlet. But even then, Sarah handled it with grace, focusing on her children and her faith. NHER private photos from this time show something powerful. A woman smiling through storms, holding her grandchild, hiking alone in the Alaskan wilderness. They remind people that behind the speeches and controversies was someone deeply human, emotional, strong, but also vulnerable. The world had seen her as a symbol, a headline, a politician, but in those quiet moments, she was simply Sarah, a woman who loved her family, her state, and her independence. And even though she stepped away from the national spotlight, her influence never truly disappeared. Supporters continued to see her as an icon of conservative values. someone who opened doors for women in politics, even if her path was rough and full of criticism. Sarah Palin's story had transformed from a political journey into a personal one, where resilience mattered more than power. By the late 2010s, she had become something rare in modern American life, a public figure who survived the storm of fame and kept her sense of self. Her photos from that period tell this story perfectly. Moments of solitude, faith, and family, far from the noise of the cameras that once followed her everywhere. Even with all that peace, Sarah's story wasn't over yet. In the next part, we'll look at her life in recent years, how she found a new voice, faced new controversies, and continued to surprise the world when everyone thought her story was finished. In 2020, after years of staying out of the political spotlight, Sarah surprised everyone again. She returned to the public eye in a completely unexpected way as a contestant on the hit show The Masked Singer. Dressed in a colorful bear costume, she performed "Baby Got Back" and shocked viewers across the country. It was a fun, lighthearted moment that showed a new side of her, a woman who could laugh at herself and enjoy life beyond politics. That appearance went viral, reminding the world that Sarah Palin was still full of surprises. Behind the humor and television moments, her personal life was still evolving. Her marriage to Todd officially ended, and for the first time in decades, she was truly on her own. In interviews, Sarah admitted that the divorce was painful, but she also spoke about growth, forgiveness, and faith. "You learn who you really are," she once said. "When everything else falls apart, you realize what truly matters." NHER private photos during this period tell a story that words can't. Pictures of her standing alone on snowy landscapes, smiling beside her grandchildren, or praying quietly by the water's edge show a woman who had found peace in simplicity. They capture a sense of freedom, not political freedom, but emotional freedom. In 2022, she once again made headlines when she decided to run for Alaska's open congressional seat. Many were surprised, some were skeptical, but her supporters were thrilled to see her return. Though she didn't win the race, her campaign reignited conversations about her legacy. She had become more than a political figure. She was a symbol of endurance. Few people in American public life had faced as much criticism, media mockery, and personal struggle, yet still managed to smile and move forward. Today, Sarah Palin lives a quieter life, but her presence continues to inspire curiosity. The private moments she shares, sometimes through photos, sometimes through small messages, show gratitude, reflection, and strength. She often speaks about faith, the beauty of Alaska, and the importance of family. Her story, once filled with controversy and chaos, has softened into something more human and relatable. NTHOs, most private photos that fans admire so much are not just about beauty or nostalgia. They tell the truth about survival. They show a woman who once stood on one of the world's biggest stages, who fell, who was mocked, but who never lost her spirit. They show laughter after loss, peace after storms, and faith after doubt. They remind us that behind every headline is a real person, one who feels, forgives, and keeps going. Sarah Palin's untold story isn't about politics anymore. It's about resilience. A woman who walked through fire, carried scars, and still found her way back to light. Whether you admire her or disagree with her, her journey remains one of the most unforgettable stories of our time. Proof that even in the harshest spotlight, humanity shines. After stepping out of the governor's mansion and away from daily political battles, Sarah Palin began a new chapter of her life, one that few people expected. While many assumed she would disappear quietly from the spotlight, Sarah refused to fade away. She was no longer bound by the limits of politics. Instead, she used her fame and freedom to redefine who she was. But fame is a tricky thing. It gives and it takes away, often at the same time. In the years following her resignation, Sarah focused on rebuilding her personal life. Alaska remained her safe place, a land of peace, beauty, and reflection. Her home in Wasilla became the center of her world again, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. The woman who once stood on national stages now spent more time hiking mountains, watching sunsets, and sharing quiet family dinners. But even from afar, the media never stopped watching her. Every appearance, every public outing, and every private photo that surfaced became part of a new story about who Sarah Palin had become. NHER social media accounts began showing glimpses of that private side. Photos of her with her dogs, her children, and her friends. Pictures of her enjoying the outdoors, laughing at small moments, or holding her grandson close, gave her followers a sense of warmth that politics rarely allowed. For many, these images were a reminder that Sarah was still the same down-to-earth Alaskan woman people had fallen in love with in 2008. Strong, spiritual, and deeply connected to her roots. Yet, life wasn't always calm. In 2011, Sarah faced another emotional test when a tragic shooting in Arizona targeted one of her political allies, Gabrielle Giffords. Some critics unfairly tried to link Palin's past political statements to the event, sparking a wave of intense backlash. The media storm was brutal, and once again, Sarah found herself at the center of national controversy. She spoke openly about how deeply it hurt to be blamed for something she had no connection to. That moment marked a turning point. She began stepping away from politics, focusing instead on faith, family, and her own mental peace. NBUT Sarah Palin was never one to stay silent for long. She remained active in conservative circles, speaking at rallies, supporting causes she believed in, and continuing to inspire young women to stand up for their beliefs. Her voice carried weight, not because of power, but because of experience. She had been through the fire and survived. Sarah has also become more reflective about her time in politics. In several interviews, she's admitted that fame came too fast and too hard. She's talked about how the media often turned her into a caricature, someone people laughed at instead of listened to. But even in those words, there's no bitterness. There's acceptance, even gratitude. She once said, "God doesn't make mistakes. Every season teaches us something. The tough ones just teach us faster." Today, she continues to inspire a generation of women who see in her story the courage to be different, to speak up, to fall, to stand again. Whether you agree with her politics or not, Sarah Palin represents something real: the strength to face failure with dignity and to rebuild life on your own terms. NHER private photos, some taken in her living room, others out in the wilderness, show that she's finally at peace with who she is. She doesn't chase headlines anymore. She doesn't need to. The legacy she built isn't just written in newspapers or political speeches. It's written in the hearts of people who saw her rise, fall, and rise again. When you look at her life as a whole, you see a story that mirrors Alaska itself. Wild, unpredictable, breathtaking, and brutally honest. There are seasons of endless light and moments of deep, cold darkness. But through it all, the spirit endures. That's what Sarah Palin's story is about. Not just survival, but grace under fire. In a world where fame often destroys people, Sarah managed to find her way back home, to her roots, to her faith, to herself. Her most private photos remind us that even the strongest people have soft sides, and even those who seem unshakable have moments of silence and vulnerability. They are a window into the life of a woman who lived boldly, loved fiercely, and never let the world define her. And so, when we look at those rare, unseen pictures of Sarah Palin, smiling beside her family, walking alone across the snowy plains, laughing with friends far from politics, we aren't just seeing images. We're seeing chapters of a life lived fully, a life that teaches one simple truth: you can lose everything. Power, fame, position, and still win where it matters most. In strength, in spirit, and in heart. That's the untold story of Sarah Palin. Not the governor, not the vice presidential candidate, not the media target, but the woman, the mother, the survivor, the Alaskan soul who taught the world that resilience is the most beautiful form of power. NC losing their ration/outgrown. In the end, Sarah Palin's story isn't about politics or fame, it's about strength. From a small-town girl in Alaska to one of the most recognized women in America, she lived through praise, criticism, and heartbreak. Yet through every storm, she never lost herself. NHER, most private photos tell that truth. Not through headlines or speeches, but through moments of peace, love, and quiet courage. They show a woman who fell, stood up, and kept moving forward when the world wanted her to stop. Then maybe that's why her story still matters. Because Sarah Palin reminds us that no matter how public our struggles become, we can still find beauty in our scars and power in our silence. This isn't just her untold story. It's a reminder to us all. The strongest people are often the ones who keep smiling when no one's watching. As the years passed, Sarah Palin's public life slowly shifted into something more reflective. less about politics and more about legacy. The once fiery governor of Alaska, who once stood under the blinding lights of presidential rallies and media cameras, now appeared in photos with a quiet smile, standing against the vast landscapes of her beloved state. Time had changed her, but it hadn't broken her. In fact, those changes made her story even more fascinating. Sarah's journey wasn't just about political wins or losses. It was about how a small-town woman from Wasilla became a symbol of determination, courage, and survival in the harsh world of fame. Few people could endure the constant public judgment, mockery, and personal attacks she faced, yet still managed to keep their sense of humor, faith, and love for life intact. And yet, that's exactly what she did. When you look at Sarah Palin's most private photos, the ones not taken for campaigns or magazines, you see a very different story unfold. There's a picture of her sitting by a campfire, surrounded by family, wrapped in a warm blanket, smiling softly at the camera. There's another of her standing near a frozen lake, eyes closed, the wind brushing through her hair, as if she's finding peace in the silence of nature. These images don't scream power or politics, they whisper humanity. They show a woman who has lived through storms and found strength in stillness. NHER children, once at the center of media chaos, have grown up. Bristol, her daughter, became a mother at a young age and faced her own share of public attention. Yet, just like her mother, she built a life based on resilience and family. Sarah's son Track served in the military, while her youngest, Trig, who was born with Down syndrome, continues to be the heart of the Palin family, a reminder of unconditional love and the beauty of patience. Through her photos with Trig, Sarah shows a tenderness that words can't capture. You see her holding him close, smiling proudly, her eyes filled with both pride and protectiveness. Those are the moments that tell you who Sarah Palin really is. Beyond the speeches, beyond the interviews, and even now, Sarah remains deeply connected to her faith. She often speaks about how prayer and belief helped her through her hardest times. The defeats, the betrayals, the loneliness that comes after fame fades. Her photos often include small symbols of that faith: a cross around her neck, a Bible on her table, or the glow of sunset over a quiet Alaskan church. For her, faith isn't just something she talks about, it's something she lives.